Hey y'all! If you watched my vlog of my road trip from Los Angeles to New York, then you expected this recap to be coming. If you didn't, that's totally okay. In this video, we're just going to talk about some of the things that I didn't show, some of the scariest moments of the road trip, as well as the funny ones, and we're going to talk about the money and how much I spent on this entire road trip, which really wasn't that much, but I'm going to share with you how I made that happen. And also we're going to talk about my process, how I picked where I was going to stop, how I sort of researched, where to go, whatever, things like that. And I did make some notes, so if I look down, that's why. It's just to make sure that I don't skip any of the things that I really do want to talk about. And yeah, let's dive right in. If you don't know me, my name is Mia, and I'm a filmmaker based in New York mostly, and also Los Angeles, and I'm also a lover of travel. I love traveling and encouraging other people to live their travel dreams, especially my fellow Black people. So let's get into it. So let's get the money out of the way. Let's do that. I was going to dive into the scary parts, but let's just get the money out of the way. Let's do that instead. So I shared a lot of my gas stops in the vlogs, but just to give you a total of what I spent, I saved all my receipts, I totaled it all up, and it came out to $280.89 for all of my gas from Los Angeles to New York, which to me is not that bad. It's a little bit less than the gas calculators told me online, probably because I was scouting out for the cheapest. I kept going to Love's and using the 10 cents off per gallon with the app. I was very cautious about where I went, so I wasn't, stopping at a ton of Shells or Exxons and things like that. The more expensive premium gas stations, I didn't spend any money on a hotel or Airbnb. I paid for parking the night that I stayed in Dallas. I think that was my third night of the road trip. I paid maybe, I want to say about $20, maybe a little bit less for parking that night. But otherwise, I made sure the hotels that I stayed at had parking included, like they had parking lots in Albuquerque, in Memphis, and in Franklin. They had parking lots, so I didn't have to worry about that. And the way I didn't spend any money on hotels was I used credit card points. I used a lot of Hyatts, actually. I think it was mostly Hyatts because they have their Category 1 hotels that are only about 5,000 points a night, which is not that much at all when you're thinking about how you accumulate points, and if you're doing any of the credit card bonuses, that is a steal. That's awesome. And I believe, yes, in Dallas, I stayed at one of the more luxury hotels, and that just meant that I used one of my free nights. So instead of paying 5,000 points or 8,000 points or 12,000 points, I just used my Hyatt free night, and it was a really nice hotel for free. I had to pay the annual fee, of course, but relatively free. And yeah, that's the money. That was basically it. I spent money on food while I was gone, but otherwise it was the gas, which is $280, and the parking for that night, my food, coffee, snacks, all that stuff. It was a relatively inexpensive trip. Now, if I were stopping, if I were making stops and doing touristy things, of course that would have gone up, but that's still, if you're thinking about going from one side of the country clear to the other side of the country, I think you can sort of get some traveling in the United States and be pretty happy with that for the amount of money it's going to cost you. If I would have like put more travel days in it, like exploring days, I think it would have been really nice actually, instead of just going straight through and just staying at hotels during the night. That would have been pretty cool. I recommend it. I would have liked to spend some more time in Albuquerque, actually. It seemed like a pretty cool place. They had some good sort of cultural things going on there. And Dallas would have been really fun to stay a little bit longer. But anyway, that's the money. If you can make your trip, if you're doing a trip, into a longer trip so that you can explore more, that seems like a good idea to me. But hey, I'm happy with my trip anyway. Just open roads and audiobooks. Amazing. So now let's talk about some of the things I couldn't show. If you saw the first day, I had a very long way to go. I think maybe it was 12 hours that I was, 10 or 12 hours I was planning on traveling that day. I think 10 hours. And that's from Los Angeles all the way to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I ended up being on the road, just sitting for 2 hours because there was an accident up ahead. Now I showed all of that. What I didn't show was later that night how dark it was. It was this one of the scariest nights of my life because like I had no choice in driving at night because of the stopping that long. Like I started really early in the morning. I would have made it in decent timing, but 2 hours of daylight being lost was a huge disadvantage. And when I got to some of the more rural parts of New Mexico, it was terrifying. So suddenly I'm on these really dark roads. There's just open fields on either side of the freeway. Just openness. Nothing as far as the eye can see. And I'm driving along the street and I'm like, okay, it's okay. Maybe I'll just put on my high beams and I can see a little bit more because there's not a street light in sight. There's nothing. For a portion of it, I had the moon, and then suddenly I'm like, where's the moon? Where did the moon go? I don't know where the moon went. So now I have nothing. I have no light except for the light from my headlights. And not even opposing traffic. It was pretty deserted for the most part. Every once in a while, a car would come along. They also had their high beams on because no one could see anything. And then, we would like, as a courtesy, turn off our high beams until we passed each other. But then I was back to being by myself in this deserted land of nothingness. So that's one thing I'm scared about because I'm like, okay, I have a lot of gas. Okay, I'm gonna gas. Okay. The car's okay. It's not having any mechanical issues. That's good. Okay. So yeah, I'm here by myself, but I'm not gonna break down. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm not gonna hit anything. It's gonna be great. Okay, whatever. It's good. And I keep going down the road. This dark road by myself. No one in sight at all. Not a building, not a house, nothing. At least not that I can see. It just seems like all emptiness to me. And then suddenly I see something move off to the right. And I'm like, is that an animal? And as I get closer, I'm like, oh yeah, that's an animal. There are no barriers on this road. So now I'm thinking, crap, I have to worry about hitting wild animals or, crashing because I'm trying to avoid an animal. Which, okay, all right, so now I just have to pay really close attention to the sides of the road, and then something runs across the road. And I say run loosely because this animal almost was not trying to hurry. It was just like crossing the road, and I'm not going slow. This is a freeway. Like, I'm not speeding, but I'm not going slow enough to where I can like feasibly stop very quickly if an animal happens to run across or try to cross the road. So now I'm like, okay, we've got animals on the sides of the road. We have animals that are trying to cross the road. And I've got to be extra, extra careful to make sure that I don't kill an animal, kill myself, or just crash trying to avoid either of those situations. So now I spend maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours driving like this. I'm just like super, super tense. I'm holding the steering wheel. I'm looking at the road. I'm scanning the road. I'm looking at the sides. I'm scanning the sides. And every once in a while I see like a big animal or a medium-sized animal on the side of the road on either side. And I'm like, okay. Cool animals. I'm so excited to see the wildlife, but also I'm so scared. I do not want to crash. I don't want to be stranded out here. Can you imagine? I am by myself in the darkness, late at night, on some deserted road in the middle of who knows where. I think I was in New Mexico. Like, it's just, I don't see any signs. I don't see any signs of life. I don't see anything. It's just me hoping that I survive this night. And then, super, super tense. I'm still driving. I'm driving down this road, and then I see something rise off to the side of me. Suddenly there's this huge object off to my right. Huge. Like a looming presence off to the right. And I'm so busy trying to stare at the road and scan the road and make sure I don't kill anything or myself that I'm like, okay, I want to look off to the side. I think maybe it's a mountain. It might be a mountain. I want to look off to the side, but I can't. I cannot look off because if I look, what if an animal enters the road and I don't see it in that moment? Or what if because this is a curvy road at this point. I'm curving a little bit, so I have to be very, very careful. And I'm like, okay, I want to look, okay. Let me just sort of glance. I try to glance, and it's so dark. It's so dark. I can't see anything. I cannot see a thing. Like, I can use my eyes, but it's like my headlights are giving me what's immediately in front of me. And I can feel the presence of like just extra darkness somehow, if that was even possible. So now I've got to devote more time to looking because it's freaking me out that I don't know what this huge thing is beside me. So then I try to like sneak a couple more glances. I'm like, okay. It's a huge rock or mountain or something. Like, not like just a rock, like a boulder just sitting there. No, it was like a huge mountain or structure of some sort. I don't know what you would call it. Whatever those big things are they have in Mexico sometimes. I don't know. I'm going to call it a mountain. There's this big mountain off to my right. So now I've got a narrow patch here between me and this mountain. And then there's, I don't even know what, off to the left. I'm trying to imagine that it's just land, because if it's a cliff of some sort, or if it's something that I can just fall off of if I were to like swerve to miss something or anything like that, that would freak me out too much. So in my mind I'm like, okay, it's probably just land. Let's hope. And then I don't know why, but that being there just sort of gave me this foreboding feeling, because I was already in pitch black. I don't want this other pitch black thing off to the right. But anyways, I'm not going to beat this dead horse. I felt alone. I felt terrified. It was awful. I don't know what to tell you. As far as like a tip or something, I guess I would say nothing. I don't know. I didn't really have a choice whether or not I was going to drive at night that night. I guess I could have stopped at one point, but also the night, like, there's the deserted freeway, the road or whatever, and then sometimes the directions will divert me through these really tiny towns. Like, imagine a Western, where it's kind of deserted and you don't really see anybody out, but there are a couple of buildings, and there's like an antique shop with like mannequin animals out front. Like, there's not much in this town. There's not even a major gas station. There's not any kind of rest stop. But I'm going through these itty bitty towns. Like, I could stop and sleep in my car, but I don't even, like, there's no hotel. There's no Hyatt. There's no IHG hotel. There's no Hilton. There's nothing. There's no Motel 6. There's nothing, as far as I can see, where I can stop. And do I want to stop in this deserted Western looking town as a black woman who's traveling by herself? No. I don't know who I'll run into. Like, they could be perfectly friendly. They might be perfectly fine, but you never know. That's the problem with traveling by yourself as a black woman in the United States. It's like, that's scary. I mean, thank God I wasn't in like Alabama or Mississippi or even parts of Tennessee. Shout out to you, East Tennessee. But it's still scary. So I was not going to stop in this weird itty bitty Western looking town in the middle of nowhere, as far as I know. It's somewhere in New Mexico. I don't know anything about this place. So I kept going. I kept driving. I'm like, I'll take my chances out here with the wild animals and hope that I don't crash and deal with this big old mountain on the side of me. So you could plan shorter days. I was very ambitious with like how far I was going to drive each day. I don't think I drove less than, actually one day I did drive 8 hours, I believe, but that's the day that I stopped to see my sister in Louisiana. So I was still driving at night, by choice that time, because, but yeah, it was just a rough night. Rough night. I think I got to the hotel around midnight or so. It was rough. Anyway, that's it. And then the next day, I think I was going through Texas. And this wasn't at night, thank God. But anyways, so I was going through Texas. It was nice. It was just like, you know, just driving down. A lot of these roads are in rural areas, which is cool because you get to see some really nice landscapes and farms and things like that. But I saw this sign that said, like, beware of hitchhikers. They may be escaped inmates. And I was like, huh, okay. I hadn't thought about that possibility. I didn't think about if someone was trying to hitchhike, they might be trying to escape from prison. I don't know. I had very mixed feelings about that. I was like, I mean, did I really expect to pick up a hitchhiker? Do you think? Okay, you don't know me, but do you think that I would pick up a hitchhiker? Would I really pull over and say, hey, fella, hop on in. Where do you want to go? No. Like, I respect it. I respect the hustle. I know you need to get to where you need to go. You don't have a car, okay. But I don't care if you have, you know, hitchhiker gear, like a big old backpack, and you're just like trying to travel across the states and you're hitchhiking. I wish all the best to you, but I will not be the one to pull over and stop. I'm just not going to do it. I've watched too many Lifetime movies and too many Criminal Minds episodes, and I don't want to die. Not yet. I think I still have some living to do. I hope I still have some living to do. I'm just not ready in my spirit. My spirit wants to stay right here in this body and not die. Does the spirit ever die? Let's talk about it. No. Anyways, yeah, that song was funny. It made me think about it. I was like, where's the prison even? How often are prisoners hitchhiking along this road? Like, it really sparked thought. And I love things that spark thought. Anyways, enough about that. So now let's talk about my process with planning this road trip and how I went about all of that. Now, usually when I travel, I try not to plan too much, because if you plan too much, you start to get into analysis paralysis, and then you might not do the trip. But this one, I had to do it. I needed to move my car from Los Angeles to New York so I could have my car here, since I'm mostly in New York these days. And there wasn't any way to like get around it. I mean, I could ship my car, but I didn't want to. I wanted to take the trip because I'm crazy like that, whatever. So a black woman traveling alone by herself in the United States. I know I just said alone and by herself. Ignore that. But a black woman traveling alone through the United States. Of course, there's things you need to think about. Of course, there's things you need to research a little bit more thoroughly. I definitely checked out sundown towns, because sundown towns do still exist. And it's very important to not get caught out in those situations. One place that I was absolutely sure that I did not want to stop on this trip, or ever really, is the area around Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I've been there, I've traveled there. I went on like a mother-daughter retreat in Gatlinburg years ago. Years. Maybe like over a decade ago. And the amount of racism we experienced while we were there, it was more than I had ever experienced in my childhood living in any other part of Tennessee. I've lived in Memphis, in Chattanooga, and in Murfreesboro, and I've never experienced such blatant, overt racism as I did in that area. And it was very clearly worse after dark. Very clearly worse. And I was with like a whole family, like our whole family, all of the women in our family who were a mother or a daughter, we were on that trip. And we all got like harassed essentially. And it was horrible. So I knew I did not want to go anywhere over there, period. I didn't even want to stop for gas over there. So when I left Shreveport, Louisiana, I basically no, not Shreveport. When I left Franklin, Tennessee, I drove as far as I possibly could. And before I stopped for gas or for food again, because I just wanted to make sure that I cleared that area, and also make sure I didn't drive through that area at night, because I'm not trying to get stopped at night in East Tennessee. Now, there are parts of East Tennessee that are totally fine. Chattanooga, as far as I remember, it was great. I didn't have any issues there, but I was a child when I lived there. But my mom also doesn't talk about any issues when we lived there. It was okay. You know, of course there's racism everywhere. There's racism anywhere the light touches, there is racism. But if I can avoid the concentrated amount of racism, then I absolutely will. So that was one place that I made sure not to stop. And then the rest of it, I just had to Google. I was like, okay. So like I originally planned to stop in Richmond, Virginia. So I would Google Richmond, Virginia, and I would find out their voting record. You know, are they mostly conservative? Are they mostly liberal? And I'm not trying to say anything about you conservatives out there. But if I'm going to bet my life on it, I would much rather be in a city or a town that has more liberal voters than conservative voters. Because some conservative people can be very racist and very horrible. So I made it a point to not stop anywhere that was too right-leaning. As far as like staying the night, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to stay the night anywhere that was super right-leaning. And I didn't have a ton of places that I stopped anyway. I stopped in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Dallas, Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, just for a couple hours to see my sister. I didn't stay the night there. I don't know that I would have. I don't know. I only need to stop and see her. I went straight to her apartment and then went straight back out. I don't know how the town is. I didn't even bother looking too much, but anyway. And I stopped in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee is my hometown. It has its issues, but it's my hometown. So, yeah, I stopped there. And then I came straight home from there. I didn't even stop in Richmond, Virginia, actually. That last day, I decided to just power through and come on to New York. So if I were you, if you're planning a road trip, I would absolutely do the same thing. I would Google where you want to go and find out the general population. If it's 97% white and 78% of those people voted for a certain president, then maybe you don't want to stop there. You know, if they're right-leaning to the point where it's not like, yeah, of course this is all different. You know, right-leaning in the year 2000 was a lot different than it is these days. It means different things to different people. But if I'm going to bet my money on it, I'm going to say just don't go to that place if it is 97% white and 1% black, 2% Latino or Hispanic, and 69% of them voted for a certain person. Just, you know, trust that the other black people know what they're doing. If they're not living there, you might not want to stop there. You know, if all of the white people are congregating in that one spot and most of them are voting for certain people, just, you know, just cut your losses. If a place says that they are, if you Google that city and they have a website, but they're talking about that, you know, diversity and they're welcoming and they're advertising Juneteenth and they're and certain things like that, and they're like, oh yeah, it's mostly young professionals and families, you'll probably be okay. I would take a chance on that place, and then be extra diligent when you're researching towns in the South. Definitely. Absolutely. I think that's my main tip for that. It's just make sure that you're aware of sundown towns and make sure that you're researching some of the southern states more carefully. Of course, it's racist everywhere and you can run into issues anywhere, but just to be a little bit safer as much as you possibly can to make sure that you're not in any situations that are tough to get out of or anything like that. Let's check our notes, shall we? Yeah, I think those are the main things that I wanted to touch on in this video. Be sure to watch the actual vlog if you want to see some of the sights as I was driving. A lot of it's like the greenery and landscapes and things like that, and just the journey itself. But I think that's it for today. I hope this was helpful, or at least entertaining. And be sure to comment if you are planning a road trip yourself. Where are you planning it from, and where are you going to go? Have you already done a road trip? Do you have any experiences that you want to share with us? Let us know. Like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.